Round 5 of the FIDE Grand Prix in London, and we had a great matchup. The irresistible force against the immovable object. Veselin Topalov, one of the world's finest attacking players, against Peter Leko, who is a great defender and a great technical player. Who would win out? Well, we joined the game after 19 moves, and Leko has just played the bishop to c5, attacking the rook. Well, I think any normal human being would simply retreat the rook. This is not bad for white, but it's also not bad for black. For example, here, and black has pretty good play on the dark squares, but it's a fairly balanced position. But instead, Topalov very coolly just ignored the threat and played the pawn to h3. Extraordinary. Okay, the pawn move is useful because it takes away the square from the knight that could potentially come to g4. Now, Leko, well, first he could take the rook straight away, but first he took here and played the knight into a good square, and then he took on d4. So, let's take stock. What has white got for the exchange sacrifice? Well, he has two wonderful bishops. They're to be valued. He has a very nice pawn majority on the king side. This not only keeps his king safe, but he can use the E and F pawns potentially as battering rams to break open black's king and to drive away black's knights. He also has potentially a knight coming to f5. Garry Kasparov always used to say this was his favourite attacking piece, a knight on f5 when there's a king on g8. So, decent compensation, but black has a pretty solid position. Let's see how Leko dealt with this. Well, you could retreat with the knight here, but there's no doubt that white has the initiative. It's still quite a double-edged position, but Leko played in a far more forthright way. c5. Now his idea is to put the knight back on c6 and then into d4 to block out the bishop. Now there is a slight drawback to this plan in that white can crash through straight away. Of course Leko saw this. If king takes, then queen takes knight check. But Leko's idea was to play the knight into d4. So, okay, he's given up a pawn on the king side, but this is a magnificent piece. And black has maintained superb coordination here. Okay, Topalov continued with queen e3. And now, we were expecting Leko just to play king takes knight here. And then white picks up the knight. And then queen d6. Okay, very solid from black. He'd like to trade queens. And then probably the queen just comes back to h4. And white has a pawn for the exchange, still has two bishops. I mean, both sides have reasons to be optimistic in this position. Black has a solid position. And so does white, actually. All you can say is white has reasonable compensation. But instead of this, Leko played an extraordinary move. He fought fire with fire. He played knight takes pawn on e4, and now the position is just so complicated. Both players considered that knight h5 was a very strong possibility here. Topalov said after the game he was very tempted by this. Of course, if the knight retreats, then, well, something disastrous is going to happen here on the king side. So black has to play queen e5. This was Leko's intention. So if bishop takes, then the queen can take the knight. So g4 supports the knight. And now Leko wanted to play f5. Topalov said he spent a long time looking at this position but couldn't find a way through. And there seems to be nothing clear for white. And we were looking at this and we thought, during the game, we thought maybe rook e1. Who knows what's going on here? But Topalov just wasn't quite sure about this. He couldn't see anything concrete. So he chose a move that he felt gave him a clear advantage. And there's a much simpler way to play. Bishop takes knight. So now black takes the knight. So basically this is a bit like the other positions we looked at, except black has managed to grab this central pawn. So queen check, and now if king f8, then, well, white's attack is wonderful. The king's getting cut to bits in the middle. So king h8. Now, of course, if white wants to draw, he can have it. Queen f6, king g8, queen g5, and so on, a draw by repetition. But, okay, that's not Topalov's style. He was still confident. Bishop f5. Remember, Topalov has almost trademarked the exchange sacrifice. Okay, many players have done this as well, but somehow Topalov has made such a habit of sacrificing the exchange with great success, and this is such a typical game for him, actually. So bishop f5, threatening the rook down here, and rook b8, rook e1, and Topalov said after the game that he thought he was just winning this position, actually. I mean, once this rook comes into the game, this is really the last piece that white needs to introduce into the attack. By the way, of course, this is an illegal move. The knight is pinned. So rook e8 from Leko, but Leko had seen all this. And let me show you the variation that Leko had seen. Here, Topalov thought, when he played rook e1, that he was simply winning with this move, rook e3. Because now the rook is, it seems as though the rook is completely safe on the e-file, and then white can carry on with his attack, and yeah, at some point this rook is going to be able to join the attack here, perhaps. Topalov thought he was winning, but then when he got to this position and started analysing rook e3, he realised that Leko has a wonderful defence. Rook takes, pawn takes. Well, this looks absolutely hopeless for black because of this pin. And the pawn threatens the knight. But now rook g8, queen check is forced, rook g7, of course absolutely forced. And it seems as though white should win this position. But there is no decent defence to queen g3 check. If only he could find a move to defend this pawn, then he'd be able to pick up the knight on the next turn. But there's no decent defence. So, well, in fact, the game should end in a draw. For example, pawn takes knight, queen check, and then, okay, queen takes bishop, and now it's just a draw by perpetual, and so on. A remarkable defence. So Topalov could have played rook e3, and the game would have ended in a draw. But he has great courage, and instead of going for that, he just retreated the rook back to c1, and he risked losing by playing this move, because now of course black is beginning to coordinate. So he's a very brave player, Topalov, but he still believes in his attacking chances. But you can see here black is beginning to coordinate. Okay, Topalov is still attacking. Rook c6. Now, finally he gets the rook into the game, but it's just not good enough now. Black is reasonably well coordinated here. Now rook e4. Okay, just for a moment it's dangerous. So, you know, for example, d3, rook h4, and white is getting somewhere. For example, rook f7. Well, I think you can actually take this, can't you? Yeah, this seems to be winning. So Leko had to be very careful here. Queen f7. Of course, he'd like to trade queens. Topalov's having none of it. And queen b7. Good move. Leko said he was very relieved when he played this move. So these pins make it very difficult for white to attack. In fact, probably Topalov should have taken on h7 here, and both players thought this should probably just lead to a draw. For example, here, rook takes pawn, queen takes, now you take the queen, roughly balanced position. But again, Topalov was very brave, but possibly this time he's chancing his arm. This was a bit risky, a bit too risky. Because now, in fact, black is driving white's pieces back, and if white isn't careful, he's going to lose this. For example, rook e1 threatened. If rook d1, then queen f3 threatens queen takes bishop, as well as this simplifying idea of queen takes and rook e1 check. So Topalov was forced to offer the exchange of queens. In fact, his position is solid enough that he can still draw this. White is actually very well coordinated. You can see there's nothing really for the rooks to attack. And let me just play a few more moves. This bishop, of course, is very solid here. You can see white is holding everything together. And well, in this position, they simply agree to draw. Well, it's a move repetition actually. White is too solid for black to attack anything. I think that was a wonderful game. Topalov is not having any luck in the tournament so far. He's made a lot of draws, but I think with play like this, you can see how ambitious he is and how dangerous a player he is. And after the game, he couldn't believe how well Leko had defended. So credit to Peter Leko here as well. Topalov was shaking his head. He said, most of my opponents, when I put that much pressure on them, they just crumble, but not Leko. Thanks for watching.